Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Kal Zichron Eliezer of Cincinnati, Ohio, we welcome everyone to the community-wide Siyum on Maseches Beitza. This Siyum is special as we are also hosting the Daf Yomi Commission of Agudas Yisrael's National Siyum. Thank you so much to the Daf Yomi Commission, especially Rav Elio Simcha Bamberger, for being mechavid us with this special zchus to host a special event. A special shkoyach to Rabbi Yisrael Kalif and Rabbi Yair Kogel for setting up all the AV equipment to ensure that this is being broadcast worldwide properly. On behalf of Kal Zichron Eliezer, we would like to extend a mazel tov to all the Messiahim, both locally and worldwide. We will now be mechavid Reb Tzvi Fishman of the Masifta of Cincinnati to be Messiah Maseches Beitza, followed by the Morda Asra of Kal Zichron Eliezer, Rav Avram Weinreb, who will offer divrei bracha.
Mar, the end of Beitza, has a kasha that Mar's a case of behemoths that live in the midbar, and the Gemara says that those behemoths are muktzah, and the Gemara seems to say that Rebbe holds a muktzah. So Mar's a kasha that Rebbe quotes the shita of Reb Shimon, and Reb Shimon seems to hold not of a muktzah. So the Gemara wants to know, does Rebbe hold a muktzah or not hold a muktzah? So the Gemara has three truths. Memo Mebez, the Gemara says, Iba Yisayma, Hani Nami Kugoyis V'Smukandami. So Mar's first teretz is that the reason why the Rebbe holds that there is muktzah by these behemoths, even though he holds like Reb Shimon really that there's no muktzah, is because by Gregus and Smukin, since those things, the person's maxim daitai, he's daicha them, Rashi says, so therefore there is muktzah. The second teretz of Gemara is that he himself holds a muktzah, and the reason why he mentioned Reb Shimon, he was just mentioning Reb Shimon that does hold a muktzah, but he himself holds a muktzah. Third teretz, the dveim derabanu karmeluhu. He was speaking to the Rabban, Lididiyeh muktzah, I taka hold there's no muktzah, and that's why those behemoths from the midbar taka will not be muktzah. But you, Rabbanan, oidus miyah, heich the yotzes v'reis b'Pesach. You who hold a muktzah, you should be masking to me that if they go out and they pasture in Pesach, B'nichnases b'Reviyah, Rashi says Reviyah means in Mar Cheshvan, they come back in Mar Cheshvan, Rishayna, the Beitza is saying they should be Beitza, and even though you, I taka hold there's no muktzah, and even if you hold a muktzah, be masking to me that those behemoths that go in that they go on and pasture in Pesach and come back in Mar Cheshvan, those behemoths should be Beitza, and Beitza means that it wouldn't be muktzah because it's in the house. But the Rabbanon, like midbaris, and the Rabbanon said no, it is the taka are muktzah because they have the din of midbaris, and therefore the muktzah. Zakrash v'ibay same masis nedveim the Rabbanon the isnu muktzah kamelu. Hajj Allah Muslim Paris is linked them Masech Beitza. Hajj Allah Masech Beitza, Hajj Allah Untitled Masech Beitza, Untitled Allah Nisnashim Minach Masech Beitza, Nisnashim Minon. Leib Amadim, Leib Amad Asi. Hajj Allah Masech Beitza, Hajj Allah. Leib Untitled Masech Beitza, Untitled Allah Nisnashim Minach Masech Beitza, Nisnashim Minon. Leib Amadim, Leib Amad Asi. Hajj Allah Masech Beitza, Hajj Allah. Untitled Allah Masech Beitza, Untitled Allah. Leib Nisnashim Minach Masech Beitza, Nisnashim Minon. Leib Amadim, Leib Amad Asi. Yetzem Lefanecha, Adonai Eloheinu v'Lehavisenu. Shteis Rascham Nuseinu ba'Elam Hazeh. Say Imanu Elam Habo. Hanina bar Papa, Rami bar Papa, Nachman bar Papa, Chai bar Papa, Bamari bar Papa, Rafam bar Papa, Rachish bar Papa, Sucha bar Papa, Ada bar Papa, Dori bar Papa. Haram no Adonai Eloheinu v'Lehavisenu. Rascham b'Finu v'Fias Amcha Beis Yisrael. Niya Nachman v'Setzeinu v'Setzeinu Amcha Beis Yisrael. Kulanu Yedei Shmecha. Leim Dei Seisach. Me'avei Tachnimeinu Seisach. Eloheinu Hili. Hili bim Sam b'Chukach L'manei Voish. Eloheinu Le'Yeshach B'Chukach. Kivam Chisani. Baruch Atah Adonai. V'Amdeinu Chukach. Amen. 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 Salavahed. By the Manachim from Nachadin, the Hinum Levisin, which is something called Canaan Mission based on Mendish, something called Canaan Mission Corners, and a Mashkim, hey Mashkim, on a Mashkim, the Mashkim environment, on a mail, on a mail comes car, pay mail and comes car, on Rods, on Rods, and kind of Haba, Haim Rods and Meshachas, Shnama, Vatalim, Tadim, the Meshachas, and Shem, Mimim, the Chesam, and Yachnach. Yet some of an Alchadin, High, Shames, as a time the same Sach the Bay, or Kate as in the Hassam, Sachlis, Usfar Machem, the Simon, Limlay, Lamin, Lishma, Velasquez. The Kaim is called to be something to be able to close. Call to name Amiroim, some Mide Chachamim, Amin, Lizarish, the Samish Atoim, Repim, Pizari, Zari Ad Elam. This is Kaim B, Bisalachot, Anka Isra, Shachmachot, Dishmalachov, Agitsaisa, Hisri Chisacho, Ki be your boy Malchov is received the Chosh Nice Chaim. Oich Mimino, Bismillah Shavachaved, Adonai Oiz, Lamoy Tain, Adonai Vorech, Asamai Vashalom. Iskadal, Iskadash, Meirabo. Dialma, Dios, in the Skadata, the Achemesol, the Askoyaso in the Hayalma, Nokatad, Yushalim, Shalah, Halabi Gavel, Mekla, Balkanov, Nukram in Ara, Laswapulchan, Ishmael, Nasravi, Lichum, Tuchmichum, Malchusei, Vikare, Michai, Mechan, Mechan, Rabbi Israel, Bagolov is Makare, Bimro, Amen. Hey, Shmei Rabo, Mirvadach, Lovam Lomei, Yom Mayor, Yisrach, Mishamach, Misham, Shema, Mishnase, Yisadar, Bishlem, Yisadar, Shmei Dukucha, Bricho. Wait, Lord, Mikol, Mikosah, Vishar, Sadr, Mikosah, Vinechem, Osah, Daminom, Yoma, Vimru, Amen. Yisham, Amanon, Matamadian, Mikol, Tamizin, to summon the Hoin, Makol, Mando, Ismarais, Vaso, Din, Mikol, Savasar. Yelohin Khan Shom Rabo Khin Mikhaz Nevrach Min Khain Rikhem Zen Rikhem Kunam Kun Moin Mishmai Parov Imru Amen. Yesh Shom Rabo Mishmai Yom Khain Moleinu Valkol Yisrael Imru Amen. I say Shalom Remo I say Shalom Moleinu Valkol Yisrael Imru Amen.
Special mazel tov to all the Messiahim. Tremendous simcha. One more Masechta and Shas completed. A number of years ago was Erev Rosh Hashanah. And Erev Rosh Hashanah, everyone's busy with davening at Torah Stellarium. There's a fellow in the shul of Rosh Shimshon Pinkus Atzal who had a siyum to make. So he decided Erev Rosh Hashanah, he was finishing a Masechta. He wanted to make a siyum. So without any pomp and fanfare, he gets up and says he wants to make a siyum. So Pinkus tells him, so where's all the food? Some drinks, some food. We'll have downstairs, Mitzvah Shem. He says, where's the drinks and food you're having to celebrate the siyum? He says, Erev Rosh Hashanah, everyone's busy. So Pinkus runs home, goes to his house and puts together some food, some drink, comes running back. Says, okay, now we're going to have a siyum. So after they finish the siyum, they start dancing, as we just danced. There was a fellow there who was a little bit taken aback. Because for him, Erev Rosh Hashanah was a time of the opposite of dancing. And he went over to Rav Pinkus and said, Harav, is this appropriate? Erev Rosh Hashanah was sitting and dancing in shul. And Rav Pinkus looked at him and said, do you know that right now in Shemayim the Malachim are dancing with us together? Erev Rosh Hashanah, exactly on Erev Rosh Hashanah. Because there's no more appropriate way to celebrate Erev Rosh Hashanah than to dance together over Simchas HaTorah. I told this meister recently to someone. He said it was coming up, it was a siyum, talking about Simchas HaTorah. And he said, I finished a Masechta. I don't necessarily feel that simcha. Siyum HaShas, incredible. 90,000 people getting together, it feels like something special. Every Masechta to feel something, it's hard to feel. So I share with him something else I saw in the book from Rav Pinkus Atzal. They spoke at a Daf Yomi Siyum Masechta, used to give a siyum, used to give a shir. He said the following idea. He says, Torah is the neshama of Klal Yisrael, the soul of Klal Yisrael itself. He says, just as an animal An animal could be killed and still may be moving and jerking around. So the person without Torah could appear they're alive, but there's no chiyus to them. There's no life to them. Torah is the lifeblood of Klal Yisrael, of every single Jew. And so the aspects of chiyus lie in all parts of Torah. And every mesechta that a person completes comprises a special facet of life that is not found in any other mesechta. And that's the simcha he says that we have to feel, that we need to feel, that we're supposed to feel. On every drop of Torah that a person attains, they're gaining chiyus, life itself. And there's something in every word of Torah that the other word doesn't have. In every daf, in every mesechta, there's an aspect of chiyus you can't find anywhere else. And if we want to be people that are completely alive, that comes through the completion of every single word of Torah, which has its own form of chiyus. That chiyus is HaKadosh Baruch Hu talking to us and imbuing chiyus through every word of Torah. And whether we're learning that Yomi or some other limud, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is imbuing chiyus into us with every word of Torah. And that's what we're celebrating tonight. And that's what we celebrate every single day with every word of Torah that a person learns. I got one more drop of chiyus. I'm alive in a whole different way that I wasn't yesterday. And if that doesn't give us simcha, I'm not sure what will. Beitza Hashem, we should continue on celebrating every word of Torah, every line of Gemara, every daf, every perek, every mesechta, shas, and ultimately kol Torah kula, which every bit has its own drop of chiyus. It's a schus that we have with us. Rabbi Miller, who came and traveled from Detroit, just a short time ago, there wasn't direct flights from Detroit. It must be Rabbi Miller's schus HaKadosh Baruch Hu was mazman direct flights to come here. He was able to get here without hopefully not too much tircha. With tremendous chus, they took the time and gave up all that it was going on in Detroit. Hashem, he had a tremendous moisid, a lot going on. And it's a chus that is here to mechazek us, to give us one more drop of simchas HaTorah, to feel what we're celebrating, to appreciate what we're celebrating, and to be able to have the true appreciation of what Torah is really all about. It's chus and shus by Miller, to be mechazek us with the bracha l'kavod Siyum.
Birshus the Rav Weinreb Shlita, Birshus Rav Kaufman Shlita, Birshus the Kehillah Kadosh of Cincinnati, and Birshus the many Loimdei Daf Yomi who are joining from around America. First, I would like to thank Agudas Yisrael and the Cincinnati Kehillah for inviting me here this evening. You know, when people move to a new place, they rely on their neighbors to welcome them. Our family moved to Detroit less than 2 months ago, and Cincinnati is amongst our closest neighbors. And so nice of you to invite me round to a Siyum. It's be'emes a tremendous chus to take part in this Simchas HaTorah, a Siyum of Maseches Beitza that is uniting thousands of Yidden in the spirit of Ve'osu Chulam Agudo Achas La'asis Ritzeincho B'leiv of Sholem. thousands of Yidden around America and around the world have been Messiahing this Masechet together and are gearing up to begin Masechet Rosh Hashanah together. But I feel I have to begin with an admission. I myself haven't been learning Daf Yomi, and somehow it didn't seem right to me to speak at a Daf Yomi Siyum when I'm not a part of it. But then I remembered a story that I saw years ago from Horav Tzvi Hish Febe, Zeichet Tzadik Livrocha. And he told of a kehillah somewhere in Eastern Europe who were celebrating Simchas Torah together. And like every kehillah, they were singing and dancing, rejoicing with the Torah. And in the middle of the circle, there was a Yid who was dancing harder, with more excitement than anyone else. He was out-dancing the crowd. And he was Yankel, who was known in the shtetl. He was known in their village as Yankel Am Ha'oretz. He was Yankel who had never learnt Torah, Yankel who was ignorant. And he was there, he was sos v'someach. He was dancing harder than anyone. So someone went over to him and said, "You know, Yankel, it's so nice that you're here and we're happy for you to join us, but why are you so overtaken with simcha? You're not kosher, you're not connected to Limud HaTorah. You're Yankel Am Ha'oretz. Why are you the center of the simcha in our shul?" So Yankel looked up and he said, "I'll tell you, when I walked in this evening, I was thinking the same. I thought that Simchas Torah, I'll stand on the side. This is the Simcha of the Loimdei Torah, of the Talmidei Chachomim, and I'll be on the periphery. I'll stay mibachutz." But he said, but then I remembered, less than 2 weeks ago, I was here in the shul. It was Yom Kippurim. And he said, like every Yid, I was saying the vidui, I was confessing my sins, clapping al chet. And I went through the list of al chets, and I was feeling more and more guilty, so bad about myself, so many averos that I'd done. And then he said, I got to one al chet shechotonu lefonecho bechapas sheichad. There's an al chet for the avera of taking sheichad, taking a bribe. When a dayan has a din Torah, so there's an issa chomu, for him to allow himself to be bribed in any way. And for that there's an al chet shechotonu lefonecho bechapas sheichad. So he said, you know, I stopped and I thought to myself, 1 second, here there's one al chet that isn't on my cheshbon. I'm a simple man, I'm Yankel Am Ha'oretz. This is for the dayonim, for the rabbonim, the talmidei chachomim, those who are involved in dinei Torah. They do this avera. This one I can leave out. I don't need to clap al chet for chapas sheichad. So he said, I was about to skip it, to move on. He said, but then I stopped and I thought to myself, you know, Kol Yisrael Arivim, Zeh lo Zeh, Klal Yisrael are one. And if the Rabbonim, if the Talmidei Chachomim do a chait of Sheichad, then I've got to be a part of that. I've got to clap al chait for them. So he said, no, he said, on Yom Kippur I stood here and I clapped al chait for the Talmidei Chachomim. So today, Simchas Torah. So kommt mich nicht, don't I deserve to dance, to join the Simcha of Limud HaTorah together with the Rabbonim, with the Talmidei Chachomim? So I remembered that story and I thought, you know, I've had the zechus of being in chinuch for many years. For the last 18 years, I was a mashkiach in Beitza yeshiva, and in the world of chinuch, you have to klap al chait every now and then with talmidim. So Mustama, I'm entitled to be a part of this special simcha of Klal Yisrael Siyum, of Maseches Beitza. There is a well-known Kabbalah that when a Yid has a kvius in Torah, he has a fixed seder for Limud HaTorah. And within his daily learning, he discovers something me'inyon de Yomi. He comes up with something that is connected to the time of the year, to the parsha, even to current affairs. So there is a Kabbalah that's a siman toiv. That's a good sign min hashamayim. He's being shown that his learning is well received. Those who learn Daf Yomi experience this all the time. Leimdei Daf Yomi are forever recounting how punkt in today's daf we came across something that's to do with the parsha or to do with the Yom Tov. We're not learning the Masechta of the Yom Tov, but punkt, the Yom Tov appeared in today's daf. Or something that's happened in the world or in one's own personal life. Somehow, Loimdei Daf Yomi seem to experience this more. They find a connection to Inyona de Yomi. It seems that the commitment of sticking with the daf gives this special siyata dishmaya and gives these simonim toivim b'yeses eis more than the rest of us experience. But this evening, it doesn't seem to be working. Things seem to be going wrong because we've just finished with Chodesh Tishrei. We've been through Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippurim, Sukkot. It was hard, but we said goodbye to the Yomim Tovim, and we've entered Chodesh Cheshvan. We've begun the long winter. And yet, the Daf Yomi of tomorrow morning, of this evening, is Rosh Hashanah Daf Beis. We're back to Rosh Hashanah. And that doesn't seem to work with Daf Yomi's skula. It seems what we're learning is not so much a dover be'itei. So, B'Reshuschem, I'd like to share a thought that could perhaps give us some understanding of why it's so right for us to be beginning Rosh Hashanah now. the Avodah of Chodesh Tishrei, which begins with the Yom Tov Shel Rosh Hashanah, and then Aseres Yemei Tshuva, Yom Kippurim, beautiful Yom Tov of Sukkot. That Avodah climaxes with the Yom Tov of Shmini Atzeres. And we know what steht in Chazal. Chazal tell us, Muvo Barashi in Parshas Emor, and again in Parshas Pinchos, that on Shmini Atzeres, Klal Yisrael are kebonim haniftorim me'aviem. We're like children who are leaving, who are parting with their father. V'hu oimei lohem, koshe olai preidaschem. Their father says, you've been here, you've been with me for a while, you've been visiting, and now you're leaving, koshe olai preidaschem. It's hard. It's hard for me that you're leaving. It's hard for us to separate. Ikvu yoim echod oid. His akvu oid ma'at. Stay just a little longer. So Chazal say that Klal Yisrael have been with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a different way. We've had a different level of dveikus throughout the Yomim HaNeiroim and then Sukkos. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, it's a shveh, it's difficult. Kosher alai preidaschem. Hard for us to separate. So stay one more day. Just remain one more day, and that's Shmini Atzeres. V'akushya yadua. Everyone asks that. It's a beautiful moshel and nimshel. But how is this going to help? If anything, it'll just prolong the agony. If it's difficult to part, if kosher alai preidaschem, so staying another day will only make things more difficult. After another day of being together, it'll be even harder to part. And the Sforim explain, kol echot kefi darkoi, each with their mahalach, but hatzad hashove shebahem. Many of the Sforim express the same idea, that the avodah of this day of Shmini Atzeres is to ensure that there'll be no preda. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, kosher alai preidaschem. The preda is hard, so stay, remain one more day, and let's ensure through this day that the preda will never happen. And in this vein, Hagon Rav Yitzchok Kutner Zeichet Tzadik Livrocha explained that that's why Chazal were koivea the day of Shmini Atzeres as being the day of Simchas Torah. That, of course, has no makir in the Torah itself. It's not even a din derabanan. It's something that was introduced later by our Chachomim. They were koivea. They decided that this day of Shmini Atzeres, this is the day of Simchas Torah. This is the one day in the year when a Yid, when Klal Yisrael are allowed to take out the Sifrei Torah and dance with them. Because it's through Simchas HaTorah that will ensure that there won't be a preda. It's the Simchas HaTorah that takes us from kosher alai preidaschem to a point where we'll remain together forever. To a point where there'll be no separation. So why is that? Why is it that Simchas HaTorah is what creates, what ensures an eternal bond? Kesher shel kayomo. Why is it that Simchas HaTorah is the answer to Kosher Olai Preidaschem? In the Medrash Tanchuma, in yesterday's Parashas Noach, there's a long Medrash Tanchuma that talks about Torah Sheba'al Peh. It's unclear why the Medrash Tanchuma is in Parashas Noach, but that's where it is. And the Medrash Tanchuma is marich, talks at length about the different aspects, the mailas of Torah Sheba'al Peh. And B'Seich HaDvorim, the Medrash brings a posuk from Yeshaya, where the posuk says, Ha'om ha'holchim b'choshech, ro oir godel. The nation who walk in the darkness, ro oir godel, they saw a great light. And on these words, the Medrash Tanchuma says, the oir godel is the oir shenivra b'yoyim rishon. The oir godel referred to in this pasuk is the oir, the original light that was created on the first day of creation, the light that Chazal called the oir hagonus, the hidden light. Shegenozoi HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu put this light away. And we know Chazal tell us HaKadosh Baruch Hu was going to use this light, la'osid lovely. But the Medrash Tanchuma says, this oir godel is the oir shenivro b'yoyim rishon shegenozoi HaKadosh Baruch Hu la'amelei Torah sheba'al peh b'yoyim u'v'alayla. This original light that HaKadosh Baruch Hu first created. Chazal tell us on Yom Rishon, Rashi brings this. On Yom Rishon, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a light that we no longer have. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw that the world wasn't up to living with this light. The world wasn't roi for this light. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu took this light and replaced it with a lesser light. And this original light is gonuz la'osid lovoi. So the Medrash says this oir, certainly it's the oir of la'osid lovoi, but it's around, it's available, even in our world. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was going as it, la'amelei Torah sheba'al peh b'yom u'v'alayla. When a Yid sits at his Gemara, he's accessing this oir hagonus. So of course, the oir hagonus is lemala me'asogosenu, certainly beyond anything I understand. But perhaps we can have some hat'omah, some taste of what this means, what this might mean to us in our limud of Torah sheba'al peh. The Gemara Maseches Chagiga talks about this oir hagonus. The Gemara there explains, as Rashi brings, that this oir was created. It was in existence, according to Chazal, only for 36 hours, and was later put aside la'osid lovei. The Gemara in Chagiga writes about this oir. Omar Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar said, oir shebara HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'yom rishon, the oir that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created b'yom rishon, Odom tzoife bo misoif ha'olam v'ad soifo. Man, Odom Rishon, could see with this light misoif ha'olam v'ad soifo, from one end of the world to the other. So he's stating Gemara, that's what the Gemara says in Maseches Chagiga Daf Yud Beis. This original oir, the oir hagonus, was so powerful that Odom could see misoif ha'olam v'ad soifo. So what does that mean? First of all, what's the maila? What's the advantage of being able to see me, Seifa Ilam Ad Seifa, to be in Cincinnati and see what's going on in Peru? What's happening from there? What's the big idea? These days, we have the wherewithal to see me Seifa Ilam Ad Seifa, and it's not doing us much good. So what's the Meile? What does it mean? The world is round, we now know, so however powerful the light is, unless you have complex periscopes, you can't see me Seifa Ilam Vad Seifa. So the Sfasemis explains this Chazal beautifully. He says that the word for world in Lashon HaKodesh is Olam. And Olam is Miloshin He'elam. The word Olam comes from the root of hiddenness. Because the world, the very definition of the world, is that this is a place where Mitzad Echod Meloi Chol Ha'aretz Kavoidoi, the Eibishter is everywhere, but he's hidden. And it's man's avodah to discover him. That's kol avodah. That's what we're here for, to live in the he'elam of Olam, to live in a world where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is hidden, and uncover the Kedusha, uncover the Emes, uncover the Shechina. There's a beautiful Hasidic anecdote told of Reb Baruch Hu Mimezhibush. He was a grandson of the Baal Shem Tov, and of course a great Hasidic Rebbe in his own right. And the story is told that his Einiklach, his grandchildren, one time they were in his home and they were playing together, and they were playing hide and seek. You know, I think it's called that in America, hide and seek, where, you know, there's one of the boys is on and everyone else hides, and then he's got to find them. And what sometimes happens with hide and seek is that if you find a very good hiding place and they just can't find you, so they leave you stuck there, they give up on you and they start a new round. And it seems that's what happened. One of his Einiklach had hidden himself so well, and they'd forgotten all about him. And he came running to his Zayder Baruch Hu. He was crying. And Baruch Hu lifted him into his arms and he said, "What's the matter? Why are you crying?" So between his sobs, he said, "Zayder," he said, "I've been hiding and hiding, and no one's coming to look for me." So the story goes that the Baruch Hu began to cry along with his Einikel. And the Hasidim said, "Rebbe, why is the Rebbe crying? It's only a game." And the Baruch Hu said, "I was thinking that the Eibishter Kiviyachol feels the same way. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is hiding, he's here in this world, and he's only hiding so that we should and can find him. And the Shechina Kiviyachol is Mekoinenes. The Shechina feels the same way. I'm hiding and hiding and no one's coming to look for me." That's the He'elam of Olam. So the Sfasemis says, we live in this world with so much hiddenness. There's so many questions. There's so much confusion. There's so much doubt. There's so much lack of clarity. This original Oyer, he says, was so powerful an Oyer. It was an Oyer Ruchni. It was an Oyer, certainly it had a physical aspect to it, but it was Be'ikah, it was a Ruchniistika Oyer. And with this Oyer, Odom Orishan could see Misoif Ha'olam V'ad Soifoi. He says that means Odom Orishan saw through the entire He'elam of Olam. There was nothing hidden from him. It was all clear. Adam HaRishon lived in a world with no sfeikas, with no doubt, with no confusion, with no lack of clarity. It was kulei oir. It was a world of oir. He saw me soifa oilam v'ad soifai, to the point that one of the biggest questions we have is how Adam HaRishon could do a chet. It was so clear to him that how was there even a possibility of sin? That's another sugya. But al kulponim, that was the oir with which Adam HaRishon lived. He lived with absolute clarity, with an oir that just shone through the helam of oilam. He saw me soifa oilam va'ad soifai. HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw that level of clarity was too much. That mankind had a different tafkid. That man would have to live in an unclear world. He'd have to live with a lack of clarity, with the sveikas, with the confusion. And so HaKadosh Baruch Hu removed this world, this oir. He was going as it, la'osid lovai. That leaves us with a problem. How on earth are we supposed to get this right? And it's getting harder and harder. We live in a world that's so utterly confusing. We live in a world where we're being pushed and pulled from all sides, where every day there's a new idea, where every day the liberals are convincing us that the way we were thinking is old-fashioned, is wrong. We need to be broader, we need to be more open-minded. We start to lose all sense of direction. And that's apart from confusions we have in our own lives. Nisyonis that we have, difficulties we have, questions we have of why is it working this way? So there was a light with which we could see through the confusion of life, with which we could see through the helam of olam, but that's been taken away. How can we see now? Is of them. That's what the Medrash Tanchuma is telling us. That when HaKadosh Baruch Hu took that light away, He didn't take it away completely. He was going as it within Torah. Kineir mitzvah v'seira oir means that within Torah there is that very light. And that means that when a Yid opens, he opens a Chumash, he opens a Mishnayos, he opens a Gemara, he's connecting to the oir mamish. And he begins to see. He brings clarity into his world, into his life. He's able to access something he can nash, at least, from that oir agonus. There's a most beautiful piece in Sefer Derech Eitz HaChaim from the Ramchal, near the beginning where he describes Torah. He talks about the difference between chochmos, between chochmos hanochres, between secular wisdom and Torah. Of course, there is much chochmah in the world, chochmah ba'umis. But the Ramchal says that the chochmah of the umis ha'olam is something that asher yasig haseichel betorcha. It's something that the mind, the intellect, is able to understand through being tireach, through hard work, through exertion. He says, but Torah is much more than that. He says, Acha Torah hinei kodesh hi. Ashalom metzius gevoya begivei merimim. The Torah has a higher metzius. V'chashe yasik bo ha'odom lemato, oir hi asher toir benishmosoi, lehagia oisoi el ginzei merimim ginzei haboire yisporach shemoy. says when a Yid is Isaac B'Torah Lamato, there's an oir that gets into him, and it brings him. It's Meir B'Nishmosai, and then it brings him. El Ginzei Merimim Ginzei Abir Yisborach. And he says that's what Shlomo HaMelech meant. Ki Ner Mitzvah V'Seira Oir is Oir Mamish. This isn't just a Chochmah, it's an Oir. It's a Koyach Ruchni. That's the original Oir. That's the Oir that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created b'Yom Rishon shegnozei HaKadosh Baruch Hu la'amelei Torah shebal peh b'yom u'valayla. And what's the raya for this? I think that for us, shezachinu, who have merited to be loimdei Torah, for loimdei daf hayomi, for those Yidden who are committed day after day after day to learn the daf, don't let a day go by. For us, we don't need any rayas. The raya is our own experience. We know this. We know it b'chush. We know that a day that we've learned Torah, we have a different clarity in everything we do, wherever we go. Our experience is the raya. We know this. We know that it's the only way to live life and not get lost. The only way to know good from bad, right from left. It's the oir hi. Oir mamish, v'loi chochma levad, oir hi asher toir b'nishmosoi. The Siyum explain that every Yom Tov, we speak about Yom Tov, why are they called Yom Tov? The Siyum explain that every Yom Tov is just that, it's a day when we're able to access some of that original Tov. We're able to tap in to that Oir HaGonus, about which the Pasuk says, Vayar halikim es ha'oir ki Tov. That's a Yom Tov. And when we come to the end of the Yomim Tovim, and of course, these are special days. Of course, a Yid on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippurim, Sukkot, he feels uplifted. He feels different. He feels something's happening to his neshama. He feels connected a different way. And then it's over. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Kosher alai preidaschem. So then, there's Shmini Atzeres. And on Shmini Atzeres, we celebrate Simchas Torah. On Shmini Atzeres, we makasher ourselves to the Torah, and then every day is a Yom Tov. Then we live every day with Ha'om ha'ilchim b'choshech ro oir godel. We live every day with that oir with which we can see misayfa oilam v'atzayfa. We don't leave the Yomim Tovim behind, we take them with us. And therefore, while it might seem odd, it might seem poor timing to be beginning Rosh Hashanah this evening, tomorrow morning, the truth is that those who are zeicha to be amelei Torah shebal peh b'yom u'valayla, that's exactly what happens. We finish Chodesh Tishrei and we're back at the beginning. We're back to Maseches Rosh Hashanah. That's where we are. That's what we're connected to. We're living Yomim Tovim. And Ashreinu Matov Chalkeinu, that we have this Torah without which we'd be stumbling, without which we'd be getting lost. And we have access to this Oir. I'll just be Messiah with a short anecdote. The Avnei Nezer, Zeichat Tzadik Livrocha, the Avnei Nezer was an Edom, a son-in-law of the Kotzker, Zeichat Tzadik Livrocha. And there was a a time in the life of the Avnei Nezer when he became unwell, and he was advised, doctors advised him that he mustn't learn. It's too strenuous for him to learn. He mustn't learn any Torah. So he was sitting at home, and to fill his time, he was looking through different Musas for him. It seems that's what people used to do to relax. And he was learning a sefer called Bechinas Olam. Sefer is not learnt much today. It's an old-fashioned sefer Musa that says it as it is. It speaks about Gan Eden and Gehenna, Schar and Oynish. And he was learning Bechinas Olam. So his father-in-law, the great Kotzker, came to visit him. And he looked over his shoulder and he saw him learning Bechinas Olam. So the Kotzker, he was Kiyodoi, he was sharp, he was very sharp in his approach. He said, what will the Bechinas Olam give you? He said, you'll learn about mitzvahs and averas, about schar, v'oinish, about Gan Eden and Gehenna. He said, but you'll close the sefer. He said, and the fleish wird weiter wellen. He said, you'll still have the same tivers, you'll still have the same desires, you'll still have the same physical inclinations. It's not going to change you. He said, aber a daf Gemara. He said, but when you learn a daf Gemara, that will change you. That will mean that you have different wants, you have different desires, you see life differently. Of course, we need to learn Musa every day. I once told this story in public, and afterwards I got a call from a Choshev Rov who was very upset. He said that it sounded like I was making little of Limud HaMusa. So now whenever I tell the story, I also say that this Rov called me. And of course, there's no doubt that we need to learn Musa every day, and Musa is what strengthens us and inspires us and directs us. But what the Kotzker was saying is that the Daf Gemara does something else. The Daf Gemara changes the person. And again, we know this. We know that's what makes the real change. We know from testimonies of Achenu B'nai Yisrael all over, Yidden who started being Kivea Itim LaTorah, Yidden who began learning Daf Yomi, who say, it changed me, it changed my family, it changed my environment, it changed my work. Because every day I'm accessing that Oyer, es ha'Oyer ki toiv. So Ashreinu matoiv chalkeinu, Ashreinu shezochinu, to be Messiah, another Masechta. Ashreinu that we're able to live with this great Oyer. We're mispalled, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give us the koyach, and the moyach, and the siyata d'shmaya to carry on learning His Torah, b'chol yoim v'yoim, to be maschel a Messiah, many more Masechtas, to live every day of our life with the clarity that we can only get from the Seira Oyer. Be'ezar Hashem, we should be zeicha b'koriv, to see the Oyer Agonus in its full glory, b'kiyum, Oyer chodosh al tzion toyer v'nizkech ulanu b'mheira la'oyer.
We'd like to be Mechabed Chaim Berry, a long-time and loyal Lomid of Daf Yomi with Hascholas of Maseches Rosh Hashanah. Following Reb Berry's share, we'll be hearing from Reb Shia Ostreicher, the founder of Machon Shvila Rakia, the Torah Planetarium Institute, who will be assisting us with a very interesting presentation to assist us with understanding some of the more complex sugyas coming up in Rosh Hashanah.
Shus the Rav, the Kehillah. First Mishnah, Rosh Hashanah. Arba Rosh Hashanim Haim. There are 4 points in the year, 4 Rosh Hashanah with various halachic nafkaminas. Be'echad b'Nisan, Rosh Hashanah l'malachim v'l'regalim. Be'echad b'Nisan, the first of Nisan, is the Rosh Hashanah for malachim, as the Gemara explains that it's a nafkamina for shtarah. It's from counting Malchi Yisrael. They used to write the date of the year of the king, and they would count based on the year of Nisan. And v'regalim, the Gemara explains that refers to, we know that when a person is manader, a korban, they have a chiyuv to bring the korban a certain amount of time, and otherwise it will be over in Baal Ta'acher. And the beginning of that Zman, according to Rav Shimon, is Pesach, and that starts the cycle of Baal Ta'acher, that once 3 regalim pass by, if the person has not brought their korban, they are chayiv on Baal Ta'acher. Mishnah continues, Be'echad Be'elul, the first of Elul is Rosh Hashanah, L'Meiser Behema, for Meiser Behema, that all of the behemoths that are born that year, there's a chiyuv for Meiser for those behemoths that are born for that year, and we don't mix behemoths that are born from one year to the next year. Aber Rebbe Lazar, Rebbe Shimon Aimrim, Be'echad B'Tishrei, they hold that the Rosh Hashanah for Meiser Behema is Be'echad B'Tishrei. Be'echad B'Tishrei, the Echad B'Tishrei is the Rosh Hashanah for L'Shanim, as the Gemara explains, that for counting Shtaris as well, for Malchei Umas Ha'olam, they would actually count for the year from Brias Ha'olam. Well, the Shemitah in Rosh Hashanah is actually the beginning of the year for counting for Shemitah, that the Isser Shemitah begins from Rosh Hashanah. Well, the Yovelis and the Isser being Zarei the Kark as well for Yovel. Well, the Netiyah and for Netiyah as well, which the Gemara explains that for Orla, the Isser Orla begins from Rosh Hashanah, that the time for counting 3 years, we know that we don't have Hana from newly planted Ilanais for the first 3 years, and the Rosh Hashanah for that begins from Rosh Hashanah as well. The Lirakais, and for Meiser Yarek, Be'echad B'Shvat is the Rosh Hashanah Le'ilan Kedivrei Beis Shammai, that for Meiser Ilan, Beis Shammai holds that it's from Echad B'Shvat. Aber Beis Hillel Aimrim B'Chamisha Asar Bay, otherwise known as Tu B'Shvat, that is the Rosh Hashanah for Ilanais.
My name is Eliel Simcha Bamberger. I'm here on behalf of the Agudas Yisrael of America. I want to thank the community, especially Yedideinu, Rabbi Avraham Weinrib, the Morad Asra of this very special community, together with Rabbi Yisrael Kaufman and Rabbi Yara Kugel, who made this happen. It's also very special that we have come almost home to the hometown of our very own Rabbi Edi Matzim, the Director of Government Affairs of Agudas Yisrael, to have this Siyum being hosted here in Kahal Zichron Eliezer is very special. I'd like to thank Rav Gershon Miller, who recently moved from Gateshead to Detroit, who took from his extremely busy schedule to come and address the Siyum. He has underneath him some thousands of Talmidim in the yeshiva, and we're extremely, Beis Yehuda of Detroit, and we're extremely grateful to him. In the parish of the week, just very, very, very briefly, the pasuk tells us at the beginning of the parasha, "Vayikach Avram es Sarah ishtoi v'esloi ben achiv v'eskar rechusham asher rachashu v'sanefesh asher osu b'charan v'yetzu laleches arza Canaan v'yavoyu arza Canaan." Rav Leib Chasman tells us what is the message that's being told to us, "Vayetzu laleches arza Canaan," and immediately following, "Vayavoyu arza Canaan." He tells us that the limit from Avram Avinu is that when we want to do something successfully, we have to do it without any hesech hadas. Throughout the journey that Avram Avinu was on, he was continually focused on Vayavoyu Arza Canaan. It's well known that the Daf Yomi program was announced almost 100 years ago at the very first Aguda convention in Katowice in Poland. Rav Meir Shapiro, whose yahrzeit is this very Wednesday, gave a gift to Klal Yisrael at that first Aguda convention, the gift of Limud HaTorah B'Kviyus. This message of Vayavoyu Arza Canaan, Vayetzu laleches Arza Canaan, Vayavoyu Arza Canaan, is teaching us this secret that the Loim Dei or Malam Dei Adaf have and actualize. No hesech hadas, continually focused. We want to wish the Loim Dei Adaf, the Malam Dei Adaf, and their families a big mazel tov on this Siyum of Maseches Beitza, and as Agudas Yisrael continues to try to continue the legacy of Rav Meir Shapiro in assisting the Loim Dei Malam Dei Adaf in whichever way possible. At this point, I want to introduce Rav Shia Hertz Ostreicher, who made the trip specially from Lakewood. Rav Shia Hertz is a true Talmud Chacham Muflag and very unique, is a mumcha in many of the sugyas that we are about to touch on in Maseches Rosh Hashanah. I would like to ask Rav Shia Hertz to give us his presentation.
I was asked to speak tonight by the Hagdama, the scholar of Maseches Rosh Hashanah. I'm very excited that Baruch Hashem, that Yomi starting Maseches Rosh Hashanah. This is a Masechta that contains a topic that I'm very passionate about. I enjoy very, very much. And Baruch Hashem, I've had the opportunity over past many, many years. I spent a lot of years of my life teaching and educating and giving many, probably by now, tens of thousands of people that have heard my presentations and classes. So it's a topic that I enjoy very, very much, and Baruch Hashem, I'm able to have the opportunity now to speak about this topic. Before I begin, I first would like to thank the Rabbi Bamberger and Rabbi Matzen and all of Agudas Yisrael for giving me the opportunity to be able to speak here tonight. And Rishus, the Rabbi Weinrib and Rabbi Kaufman, and we go back, Baruch Hashem, many, many years. We're friends in Chavrusas and Yeshiva together, and when Rabbi Bamberger asked me to speak, I said, Cincinnati? Oh, of course. My good friend lives over there, and I'm very happy that I was able to come to his community and be able to speak. Mishus, the Rosh Kollel, the community Rabbanim, Kila Kadesha, and all those that are listening over the broadcast. My goal here tonight is to give a Akdama in the topic of Kiddush HaChodesh, astronomy, how things work in the sky. This way, Bez Hashem, the Leim de Hadaf, when they get to the sugyas, they spread out, Daf Yud Aleph a little bit, we'll speak about that soon, and Daf Chaf through Daf Chaf Hey, speaks about astronomical occurrences, and this way, when the Leim de get there, they'll have a clear understanding. Tonight, we'll just touch upon a few Gemaras. I wrote a Sefer Shvila Rekia on this topic, that's very, very clear and easy to understand. All the sugyas, for those that are joining us tonight, to have it in the back, and it's available online through Avenues of the Sky. So it's this way, for all the sugyas, Bez Hashem, you'll be able to get a clarkite in all those sugyas as you go along the Masechta. The way I like to present is that I start off with extremely, extremely simple, and I build it up. This way, it's as it gets more and more complex, but it's not really more complex. It's seemingly more complex, and some people feel it's hard and complicated. But the idea that I give over is in a way that it's extremely easy. And for example, let's say, what does it mean the mazel rises and sets? Why do we see different stars in the sky at different times of the year? Talking about the moon, why do we see lunar and solar eclipses, and why don't they occur every single month? And so on. These things may seem hard, but the idea is by the end of tonight of the presentation, all of them should be extremely clear, just as clear as things I'm going to start with, and I'm sure all of you know. And Baruch Hashem, over the years, had tremendous good feedback. People have said before that this topic that was seemingly abstract and hard to understand got a whole new picture, came to life, and they had a clear time understanding that. This presentation may be a little bit different than your standard astronomy class that you've had in school. I go a little different approach. That is not a new approach, it's been around thousands of years, which is visual astronomy. Go outside, look up in the sky, see the sun, the moon, the stars, the planets, and according to what you see, try to build a model and make sense out of everything you see. This way, you have a clear understanding. So, at first glance, it may seem that things are contradicting each other. However, there's no contradiction. Everything complements each other. And afterwards, you can try to put them all together, your prior knowledge with the new knowledge. You'll see how everything works hand in hand. So we'll start extremely simple, like I said, something that everyone knows. So I have over here a couple of props. We have over here a yellow ball for a sun. And everyone knows the sun rises in the east, travels through the sky, and sets in the west. Very, very simple. Why does that happen? Versteht sich, everything Hashem makes in the world, Hashem makes it happen. But everything works with a calculation, explanation. So why do we see the sun rising in the east and setting in the west? And the truth is, it's not just the sun. It's also the moon, the planets, stars go around every day. Everything rises and sets. Why does anything rise and set? So I always like to say a nice story that happened with me a couple of years ago. I live in Lakewood, and there's a bunch of little new developments that over the many years. So I moved about 5.5, 6 years ago. It's called Yesodei Court. Right near there is Lakewood Commons. And between the two developments is a little forest. By now already they chopped down most of the forest to build new houses, but when I moved in about 6 years ago, there was a forest. Took about 5 minutes to walk through the forest. In the middle of the week, I wanted to go to Lakewood Commons. You drove around, but on Shabbos, on Friday night, I used to just walk right through the forest. Sometimes it was dark, sometimes it wasn't as dark. So one time, one Friday night, I was walking with a friend of mine, and it was drizzling. If it's drizzling, it means it's cloudy. He tells me, oh, it's such a shame that it's cloudy tonight. There is no moon to light up the forest to make it easier to walk through the forest. So I told him, even if it wouldn't be cloudy, there wouldn't be any moon in the sky. He looks at me and says, why not? Now everyone knows Rosh Chodesh, the moon disappears, it gets too small, you can't see it. But it wasn't Rosh Chodesh, it was about a week before Rosh Chodesh. So he said, why no moon? I said, because the moon didn't rise yet. He says, what? The moon rises? I said, yes. Every single day, the moon will rise and set just like the sun. He tells me, it's not true. I said, okay, why are you saying it's not true? He tells me, because I see the moon even during the day. So I said, it's true. Many times you see the moon during the day, sometimes in the morning hours, sometimes in the afternoon hours. Yeah, you see the moon a lot of times during the day, but it does not mean that the moon doesn't rise and set. Every single day the moon rises and sets. He says, why does that happen? So I asked him, why does the sun rise and set? So we'll explain the simple explanation, why does the sun rise and set every single day? So we heard before that the world is shaped like a globe. This is a model, the globe is a model of the earth, shaped like a ball. A ball is something you play with. The shape of a ball is a sphere, so the shape of the earth is a sphere. People call it a ball shape, not a problem. So it's called the shape of a ball, shape of a sphere. This is how we know our planet Earth looks like. This planet Earth is constantly spinning around. In about 24 hours, it will spin around one time in about 24 hours. Now, each person lives somewhere on the globe. So we'll take a little mensch over here. We'll stick him into Cincinnati, right over here, right on top of Ohio. Standing is sometimes the fun package person jumps off, but for now, as long as he's standing, we have the little mensch standing over here on the globe. And if this Earth is spinning around one time in 24 hours, so this little mensch will go around one time in 24 hours, and all the people on Earth will spin around one time in 24 hours. Now you have a sun out there somewhere in space, and the Earth is spinning around once every 24 hours. But we don't feel like we're moving. We feel like we're staying in one place. See, even though in reality the sun is basically in the same place every single day, and the Earth is the one spinning, it seems to us that we're standing in one place, and the sun will be the one that went around the Earth one time in 24 hours. For example, I'm standing over here in the room, I'm facing the clock in the back of the room. If I would spin around one time and convince myself that I didn't move, it would seem to me that the clock went around me once. Look, the clock is in front of me. Now the clock is to my right. Now I can't see the clock because it's behind me, then to my left, and again in front of me. So if somehow it would be pretty hard to do that. But if I could convince myself I didn't move, it would seem to me like the clock went around me one time. Now, if you think about it, the clock is not the only thing in the room over here. We have tables, chairs, mechitzas, walls, and people. So if I spin around one time, it won't just be the clock. It'll be every single thing in this room will spin around me one time because I'm the one spinning. So I told my friend that night, if the reason why it seems like the sun goes around the Earth once every 24 hours because the Earth is the one spinning, if so, if you have a moon in the sky, it will seem like the moon also goes around the Earth once every 24 hours. So not just the sun, it's the moon and the planets and the stars also go around once every 24 hours. So my friend said, wow, it's such a simple thing. I never thought about it. And that's the truth. You hear it one time in your life. There's no reason to forget. If the reason why the sun rises and sets is because the Earth spins, then the moon will also rise and set every single day. Tosfos on Rosh Hashanah, Chafam at Beis, goes through the calculation a little bit. I say for Marach, about which time of day throughout the month the moon rise and set. But the idea is every day, at some time, the moon will rise, and so at some time, the moon will set. In order to understand this a little better, I brought along another model. This model is called the celestial sphere. Again, we said sphere is the shape of a ball, celestial means something in the sky. So this is a celestial sphere, is the whole entire universe. What does that mean? Inside over here, you see a 4-inch green and blue ball. That is the planet Earth, surrounded by a 16-inch clear plexiglass. Now, what is this round ball? It's the sky. Now, the sky is shaped like a ball around Earth. What does that mean? So we'll explain. Standing here on Earth, every person, even though we live on a round ball, it seems to us like we live on a flat, circular disk. It's easier to visualize this if you're standing in the ocean and there's nothing around you, just water. So it looks like the water is a round, flat disk all around. Above your head, you have the sky, and the sky comes all the way down till it touches the earth, the water on that side, and on that side. The sky looks like it's called Kippas HaShamayim, the dome of the sky, a big, huge dome on top of our head. At the rim of the dome sits on the rim of the edge of the water, and that's how we view our globe, as a round circular disk with a big dome, upside down ball on top of that flat circular earth. Now we're standing on Earth over here in Cincinnati, looking up, and we see atop of our head the sky. Someone standing on the exact opposite of us in Australia, he looks up and he sees the sky on top of his head. We're standing straight, he's upside down, or he's straight, we're upside down. Either way, it doesn't matter. We're looking at opposite directions in the sky. Both of us are looking up in the sky, and we see a sky on top of our head. That means the sky is not only shaped like a big dome on top of our head, really it's a big circle that encompasses the whole entire globe on all sides, but because the earth is not transparent, it's not see-through, we can't see through to the other side, and then we will not be able to see the other half. But in reality, really the sky circles the whole entire earth, and a person could only see half. This circular ruler inside, that's the horizon. The horizon is the place where the sky and earth meet. Above the horizon we can see. By day the sun is above the horizon. By night the sun sets below the horizon and we cannot see it. So this circular ruler splits the sky in half. Half this ball is above the horizon and half this ball is below the horizon. Every single day the earth spins around one time in 24 hours. So because of that, what will it look like? It will look like the whole entire universe spins around the earth one time in 24 hours. So this is the way the scientists believe today, is that the earth is the one spinning, but they call it apparent motion. What does it appear to be? Like I said, it's not mentioned so much in the regular science books. It's more mentioned in the amateur astronomy books, because amateur astronomers are more into just what they actually see in the sky, and they hear more of the concept of apparent motion. So the apparent motion is that the whole entire universe will spin around the earth once every 24 hours. Now, this way that scientists believe today, it wasn't accepted throughout all the generations. Like I said, it looks like the whole universe spins. So today with modern technology, they have reasons to believe. I'm not even sure if it's 100% proven, but at least it's assumed that way by all scientists, that that's the way it works today, is that the earth is the one spinning, and because of that, it looks like everything goes around. However, till about 400 years ago, everyone learned different. Obviously, it's not silly. We're talking about the biggest minds since thousands of years learned that way. So it's not a silly way, the old way. It's just today they feel with the new technology, it makes more sense to say the new way. So what is the old way? The old way is very simple. The earth stays in one place, and the whole entire universe will spin around the earth once every 24 hours. Very, very simple. So it's either we say that the earth is the one spinning and it looks like the universe spins, or actually the universe spins once every single day. The sun is part of the universe. The sun will rise and set. The moon, the stars, the planets, everything will spin around once every single day. Just to get a little practice on this, it may be worth it. I'm not sure if it's cloudy tonight or not, but in Lakewood it was cloudy last night, and it would have been a very nice night for people to look up in the sky. So I'm going to turn on Stellarium over here. Stellarium is the same software that my portable planetarium runs on. I didn't work out technical to bring down my portable planetarium here, but it's the same software. and we'll go ahead and put the Stellarium on the screen over here, and this way you can see what the sky looks like. So it's possible to turn the lights off, and this way you can see it a little clearer, a little easier to see it, if it works. So what I'm trying to show over here is, if you look on the right-hand side of the screen, it says moon. The moon is right over there. In the middle, it said that there is a red S, which is for south. Above the south, you see two white dots. One says south. Okay. So, it won't be on the broadcast, I mean. Oh, okay, so I have to figure it out then. Okay, no problem. So for now, I think we can leave it this way. It's bright enough, and you'll be able to see what I'm showing. You may not see the trees or anything, but you don't really need that. So on the right side, you got the moon. In the center, it says Saturn and Jupiter. Those are planets that you can look outside tonight at, right now, it's about 9 o'clock. If you walk outside now, this is exactly what you will see right over here. It's set for Cincinnati. This is what the sky looks like right now. So if you look up in the sky, you see the bright Jupiter, which is probably the brightest object in the sky now after the moon. Next to it, not as bright, to the right side, a little lower, is the planet Saturn. And if you look a little, let's see if we move around over here towards the west and back up the time a little bit. Venus set a short while ago. Last night, Venus was right next to the moon. The moon was right next to Venus. They're very close together, very close in the sky. So I don't know what the weather was over here in Cincinnati last night. Last night in Lakewood, you couldn't see this, but it's a very nice sight to see, a little thin crescent moon with Venus right next to it. Tonight, the moon moved a little further. This is where the moon is tonight, and slowly as the night progresses, you could watch Venus setting in the sky, and then a short while later, you could watch tonight the moon setting in the sky. So it's something to actually go outside if it's a clear night and watch the moon setting in the sky, which is very interesting thing to see. It's not just learning about it in a sefer in a book. You actually see for yourself how everything works. Now, Saturn and Jupiter are at the beginning of the night high up in the sky in the south, and then throughout the night you could watch them. I don't know how late you want to stay up, but the idea is you'll watch them move through the sky, and they'll go lower and lower in the sky till they'll finally set. So this is something you can actually see with your eyes. Go outside, watch the moon, planets setting in the sky, and you get a whole new appreciation how everything works in the sky. Okay, so now, this two ways I'm explaining, many of you may think it's called the geocentric and the heliocentric, which is true, but the word heliocentric and geocentric is not it's not trying to explain what we just explained today, because geocentric means the sun, geocentric is the center, and helio means the sun, eccentric is the center. Here we're explaining either way that the earth is in the middle, and either the earth spins, and it looks like the universe spins, or the universe actually spins. When we refer to generally heliocentric and geocentric model, we're talking about what happens once a year. That means people say, does the sun go around the earth, earth around the sun? No one says once a day that it's the sun's movement. No one says that the earth goes around the sun once a day. Even those that say the sun goes around the earth once a day is not the sun's own movement, it's either the movement from the whole entire universe, whether it's real or apparent. So let's speak about now the second, so you could call it two machlokes. One is what happens once a day. Does the earth spin or the universe spin? And the second thing is what happens once a year. Does the sun go around the earth or earth go around the sun? The sun goes around the earth, that's geocentric, the earth is in the center, and the sun goes around. Or heliocentric, the sun is in the center. They used to believe the sun is the center of the universe, and they realized not the center of the universe, it's not even the center of the Milky Way, it's just another star out there in the Milky Way, and the Milky Way is not the center of the universe, but it's the center of the solar system. So we have the sun, and once a year, the earth will travel around. It's called a solar year. little more than 365 days it will take for the Earth to travel once around the Sun. So we have over here the Sun, and let's say the Earth is right over here. 365 days later, once again, the Earth will be in the same place. Or, if you want to say the geocentric model, is the Earth is in the center. And it'll take 365 days for the Sun to go around once to come back to the same place. So those are the two ways to explain either Earth around the Sun or Sun around the Earth. Now the question is, why can't you see, look, is the Sun moving or the Sun not moving? The answer is, just like before, it seems like the Sun is moving once every single day. That means like this. If I'm holding the ball over here, and I'm standing over here on this stand over here, near the podium, and I make the ball go around me, look what's going to happen. Now I see the ball by the back doors. Now I see it by the mechitza. Now I see it by the right door. Now by the Arna Kodesh. Now by the left wall, and back to the back of the Beis Medrash. So I stood in one place, and this yellow ball representing the Sun went around me one time. But look what I could do now. I could try to keep the Sun as much as possible in the same place. Look what's going to happen. I'm going to walk around the Sun. Now I see the Sun by the back wall. Now I see the Sun by the mechitzas, by the right door. I see the Sun by the Arna Kodesh. I see the Sun by the left wall, and once again by the back. See, even though the Sun stayed in the same place, and I was the one that went around the Sun, but it would appear to me as the Sun is moving. So for thousands of years, they said the Sun is actually the one that's moving through the sky. However, today they say that's what it looks like. But really what's happening is that the Earth is the one traveling around the Sun. So when the Earth is over here, now it sees the Sun in that position. And as the Earth will travel around, it would see the background of the Sun change. And this way, it will look like the Sun is actually moving, even though in reality, the Earth was the one going around once. So now, today's way, it will seem very simple. That means like this. Every single day, the Earth rotates. It's called rotates on its axis. It's an imaginary stick. This globe actually has a stick, but there's no real stick on the world. The imaginary stick, as it rotates on its axis, 365 times, it will revolve around the Sun once in 365 days. So the daily movement of the Sun happens because the Earth is spinning, and the yearly movement happens because the Earth will revolve one time around the Sun. That's the very simple, what's yearly and what is daily. However, for the old way, which means is every single day the universe spins, and because of that the Sun rises and sets. So what happens? Does the Sun rise and set every single day? Or does the Sun rise or the Sun go around once a year? What happens? So the mashal I like to give, I don't know the highways over here. What's the north-south highway over here? 71 goes north and south. 71 north, 71 south. Let's say I'm going over here, say generally the Garden State Parkway in New Jersey, but I'm going on the 71 north, and I'm driving on a bus, and I'm driving north. The bus is going about 70 miles an hour. Which way am I going? Me with the bus, I'm going north. What would be if I would walk from the front of the bus to the back of the bus? What direction am I moving? I'm moving south. They'll say, what do you mean? The bus is going 70 miles an hour. You're not walking anywhere that fast, so you never went south. It's true, I never went south. So what happened? Which way did you go? The answer is, depends relative to what? Relative to the world, relative to the highway, me with the bus went very fast north, but on the bus itself, I went south. The Kadmonim give a mashal, kinamala al gaber chayim, have a millstone, a big, that want to grind wheat, two stones on top of each other, it has a handle, and I'm holding the handle and I'm spinning the stone to grind my wheat. On this round stone, there's a little ant, and it takes him about 10 minutes to walk around one time around the stone. How long does it take the ant to walk around? It takes him 10 minutes. But I'm going ahead with my handle and spinning around the stone every few seconds. So the ant will come back to the same place every few seconds. So two things are happening. The ant's own movement will take him 10 minutes to get around back to the same place, but because there's another movement, the whole stone together, the ant will come back every single day. Same with the Sun. Every single day we have over here in this model, here's right here, gold ball, that's for the Sun. And every single day the Sun rises, the sun sets, and the sun travels through the sky together with everything else in the universe. However, the sun has its own path that it travels around. It goes around, takes 365 days to make one full circle around. The mashal I like to give is there's a train track attached to this celestial sphere, to the sky. The track, if it's attached to the sphere, if the sphere is spinning, then the train track will spin along with it. However, the sun is a train that's traveling along that track. So if the track spins and there's a train on the track, then obviously the train will also spin. But the train has its own movement along the track that will take 365 days for it to get back to the same place. That way, we could explain daily movement and the yearly movement in the apparent motion model, how you understand the universe. Okay, now, I said before, I'll try to explain a couple of Gemaras. So there's a Gemara, Daf Yud Aleph Amud Beis, if you can start the PowerPoint, just to show the Gemara, that the Gemara brings down a pasuk, Daf Yud Aleph Amud Beis, from last week's Parsha. When did the Mabul happen? So it happened when Noach was the 600 year, B'chodesh Hasheni, in the second month, the 17th day, but it happened in the second month. So when is that second month? So the second month, but there's a disagreement. There's a Machlokes, Rabbi Shua and Rabbi Eliezer, the Gemara before that, if the world was created in Nisan or the world was created in Tishrei. So Rabbi Shua says that second day of the month, that day in the second month was the month of Iyar. Iyar was, because it's the second month, Nisan is number 1, and Iyar is number 2. So according to his Shita, Nisan is number 1, Iyar is number 2. However, Rabbi Eliezer says it was the 17th day of Mar Cheshvan. Mar Cheshvan was the second month. Why? Because if the world was created in Tishrei, Tishrei is number 1, and Mar Cheshvan is number 2. So those that learn the Gemara is very, very simple, and beautiful Gemara. However, the Gemara adds in a couple of more words that many people have no idea what that means. Rashi gives a big explanation. But the Gemara itself, so you could trust the Gemara, you can move on without really fully understanding what the Gemara means. The Gemara adds in a couple of words. When the Gemara says Rabbi Shua, the Gemara says it's Yud Zayin Be'ir, but the Gemara adds in Yom Shemazal Kima Shekeya B'Yoyim. Mazal Kima rises during the daytime. I'm sorry, Shekeya sets, Mazal Kima Shekeya sets during the daytime. And Rabbi Eliezer says it was the 17th day of Mar Cheshvan, the day that Mazal Kima rises during the daytime. So what does this mean? Mazal Kima, first of all. What does it mean a Mazal rises and sets? And if you say that Mar Cheshvan it rises during the day, and that means it will set during the night, and Rabbi Yeshua says that it rises by, it sets by day, by night. I'm sorry, it rises by night, so it will set by day. With different months of the year, at different times, it will rise and set. What does this all mean? How does this all work? So we'll explain, and we'll start step by step. Okay. So first of all, what is a mazel? What does it mean a mazel? So a mazel is, there are 12 mazolis. If you know, some of you know 12 signs of the zodiac, but I'm not an astrologer, and the chachma of the hashpah behind the mazolis, I don't know too much about. Evan Ezra wrote a lot of svarim on that, but I don't know too much about the hashpah. But there are 12 mazolis that have hashpah in the world, and that's something we know about. These are 12 out of the 88 constellations. What's a constellation? A constellation is it's just a fancy word for a group of stars, a star picture. In order someone to become familiar with the stars, time doesn't, I don't know, I wanted to show a little bit, but I think we'll skip it for now. Anyone can get star charts and can learn the night sky. The idea is that the position of each star is, even though a star itself doesn't look different, but the same way we all could read Nekudos, we know the difference between a Tzereh and a Shva, even though they're only two black dots, the same size and the same distance from each other, because they're configured above each other or near each other. That means the setup of dots we could recognize the setup of dots, which is the stars in the sky. Now, to recognize the whole sky at once is a little hard, so they took smaller areas of the sky and they configured pictures. They use their imagination. Sometimes you need a little imagination why it looks like that picture. sometimes a lot of imagination, and sometimes as much as imagination you would use, it wouldn't look like the picture they claim it to be. But it doesn't really matter. The idea is you can learn that these 5, 7, 8, 15, whatever stars in that setup is called a certain name, and then you can learn to recognize those stars in the sky. Now, most of these stars from the 88 constellations are totally fictitious. You can make them up probably much better ones yourself. However, 12 of these 88 do have a real meaning. These are the 12 mazalos. Tle, Shor, Tumim, Sartan, Arya, Besula, Maznaim, Akav, Keshes, Gedid, Dli, and Dogim. Everyone knows Mazel, Adar, Dogim. The pictures of fish. The Mazel of the month of Adar is fish. Pisces, fish. And you could actually recognize these stars in the sky, whether they look like the pictures or not. Besides these 12 mazalos, there's something called Mazel Kimo. What's Mazel Kimo? The way most people understand it, it's called the Pleiades star cluster, the M45. It's not a big constellation of star picture like the other 12. It's a small little group of stars. The Gemara says, Mai Kimo, Kamei Kechavi, like 100 stars. With your eye, you can see about 7. However, with telescopes, they can see that in that cluster there's about 100 stars. Way before telescopes, Chazal told us about 100 stars in that cluster. The Gemara says, where is Mazel Kimo? It's Zon of Tle, between Tle and Shor, 2 different mazalos. That's where it's situated in the sky. That's where you could find Mazel Tle, Mazel Kimo in the sky. So the Gemara is speaking about Mazel Kimo, and Rashi goes through all the 12 mazalos. So now we'll explain. So here are the 12 mazalos. You have Tle, Shor, Tumim, Sartan, Arya, Besula, Maznaim, Keshes, Gedid, Dli, and Dogim. There are 12 pictures of stars in the sky, one near each other, a long row. However, it's not just a long row, really it's a belt. And that means the ending of Dogim is once again near Tle, and it completely encompasses the whole entire celestial sphere. I can put it onto the correct place over here. It's meaning like this. Right over here where it says Tle, behind that are the stars of Mazel Tle, which officially look like Tle. So on, behind Shor is the stars of Mazel Shor, and all these mazalos, all the way down till Dogim over here. Behind Dogim is the stars of fish, and once again, right near that is the stars of Mazel Tle in the sky. So now we explained before that every single thing in the sky will rise and set. So the mazalos also will rise and set. So as you see throughout the day, mazalos rise, mazalos set, and everything goes around. The Gemara says, Kimo is Zon of Tle, so it's between Tle and Shor, right over here somewhere. So Kimo also sets, rises, sets, and keeps on changing, and rises and sets throughout the day. Kimo rises and sets. So now we understand what it means, a mazel, or mini mazel for Mazel Kimo, and they all rise and set, just like everything in the sky will rise and set. But the question is, why does different times of the year does Mazel Kimo rise during the day or set during the day? What does this all mean? So even though this is a more correct model, I'll use the wheel that I built over there. This is more correct, but that's a little easier to understand. This model is showing, it means like this. The sun is traveling through all the mazalos, a little hard to see, and I'll show it better on the wheel. Once a year, we said the sun travels on a train track. What is that train track? The train track is this yellow belt over here, the belt of the mazalos. Once a year, the sun travels through that belt. By 1 month it's near Tle, next month it's near Shor, and so on. Once a year, the sun will travel all the way till the end of the year. It will come back to the same place once again, near those mazalos. So we'll use the wheel, and we'll have it a little clearer, easy to understand. So we have over here 12 mazalos, and you can see there's Mizrach, the Tle is rising, Tle travels through the sky, and then Tle will set, and all the mazalos will rise and set. Everything will go around and around, and we explained before, the earth or the universe is spinning, and that's why you will see once a day all the mazalos rise and set. Besides for that, we said also, the sun will travel around the mazalos. One day it will be the beginning of Mazel Tle, next day a little further. Throughout the year, the sun will travel through all the mazalos, till once again, the beginning of next year, it would get once again to the beginning of Mazel Tle. So it will take a full year for the sun to travel through the mazalos, but as that's happening, as the sun is traveling through the mazalos, the sun is also every single day rising and setting together with the mazalos. So now the question is, if we said before that the Earth spins around one time in 24 hours, so if so, every single day the sun should rise, the mazala should spin around 24 hours, and every single day the mazal should rise and set at the same time. For example, if mazal tle will start to rise this morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, 24 hours later the next day again at 6 o'clock in the morning. And for the rest of the year, every day it should always rise at 6 o'clock in the morning. So why do we say before sometimes that mazal kima rises during the day, or it sets during the day, rises during the night, and sets during the night? The answer for that is pretty simple, now that we explained. The sun has its own path through the mazalos. It means like this. In the beginning of, let's take for example, really it's the solar days, but it's based on the Yiddish calendar, so we'll say the Yiddish dates, even though it's really based on the real date is the solar calendar. But let's say Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the sun in the morning is in the beginning of Tle. There are 12 months, 12 mazalos. Mazal Tle is for Chodesh Nisan. The sun will rise together with Mazal Tle in the beginning of Chodesh Nisan. The whole entire day, the sun with Mazal Tle will travel through the sky. By night, it will be under the horizon, Mazal Tle, and the sun will be below the horizon. And the next morning, once again, it will rise. But really what happened was the sun didn't stay in the same place for this whole day. The sun traveled. And by the next day, the sun is not in the same place anymore. The sun went a little backwards. So what happens is, I said before, the Earth spins in about 24 hours. Really, it spins in 4 minutes less than 24 hours the Earth will spin, or the universe. That means Mazal Tle, if it came up today at 6 o'clock in the morning, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, tomorrow morning it would come up 4 minutes earlier at 5:56. Mazal Tle will start to rise. The sun has moved backwards in its movement, so the sun will take 4 more minutes to rise, and the sun will rise at 6 o'clock. The next day, the Mazal Tle will rise at 5:52, but the sun once again will rise at 6 o'clock. So it's called a sidereal day, a star day. A star day is 23 hours and 56 minutes. A star will come back to the same position. Our day, a 24-hour day, is called a solar day, and that's why the sun takes 24 hours to come around, because the sun moved backwards in its movement, and then it would take a little extra time for the sun to come back to the same position, and that would take 24 hours. Now, 4 minutes may sound not such a significant amount, but multiply that by 30 days of the month, we have 30 times 4 minutes, 120 minutes, that's 2 hours. So 30 days later, on Chodesh Iyar, at 4 o'clock in the morning, Mazal Tle will start to rise. That's 2 hours earlier than it started rising in the beginning of Chodesh Nisan. There are 12 mazalos, there are 24 hours a day, so by the time 2 hours has passed, the whole entire Mazal Tle is in the sky, and Mazal Shor starts to rise in the beginning of the day at 6 o'clock in the morning together with the sun. That's the Mazal of Chodesh Iyar. The sun will rise together with Mazal Shor, and throughout the day, sun will be with the Shor. By night, it will be below the horizon with Shor. So the only Mazal you cannot see is the Mazal of that month, because by day, it's in the sky and it's shining. It can't see it because the sun is shining. And by night, you can't see it because it's because it's below the horizon, and you can't see, obviously, stars that are below the horizon. Every single month, the sun will travel through another Mazal, and that will be the Mazal for that month. So now, let's explain the Gemara of Mazal Kimo, Oile Bayoim, and Shekeah Bayoim. We have over here Mazal Kimo. Mazal Kimo is between Zon of Tle, between Tle and Shor. If Yud Zayin Be'ir, the sun is somewhere more than halfway through Mazal Shor. When the sun rises in the morning, Mazal Kimo is in the sky already. A little before going Rashi's Pshat, Tosfos Pshat is just opposite, but going Rashi, over here, before the sun will set, Mazal Kimo would set below the horizon. Zok the Gemara, Yud Zayin Be'ir, Yom Shemazal Kimo, Shekeah Bayoim. It will set during the daytime, and while it's still day, while the sun is still shining, Mazal Kimo will set during the day. However, Rabbi Lezer holds it's Yom Yud Zayin Mar Cheshvan. Mar Cheshvan is Akriv, so we'll put the sun over here a little more than halfway through Akriv. When the sun rises in the morning, Mazal Kimo is below the horizon. You can't see it. A little before the sun will set, Mazal Kimo will rise during the daytime. So Rabbi Eliezer, Yud Zayin Mar Cheshvan, Yom Shemazal Kimo Oile B'Yom will rise during the daytime. Now the Gemara should be extremely, extremely simple to understand. Now we'll move on to explaining a little bit about the Moilid, and if we have time, we'll do a little bit on the Gemara of the Mishnah, the questions they asked the Edom, the 5 questions they asked the Edom, how they saw the moon in the sky. If this room will be perfectly dark, then even though I'm holding a white ball over here, you'll not be able to see it. There's no light on this ball, it's not luminous, a white ball, but if it's completely dark in this room, there's no way you can see it. The same thing with the moon, there is no light of its own on the moon. How do we see the moon in the sky? So Hashem created something called the sun, and it's still working a little bit. You get the idea. Hold it very close. The sun lights up the moon. That means the fancy way of saying it, or the scientific way of saying it, is that the light reflects off the moon. I like to keep it simple. I see the table, chairs, people. Why do I see people? Because there's light in the room. The scientific way is the light from the room bounced off your face, and that's why I saw your face. So if you like scientific ways, not a problem. That's the scientific way why I see tables and chairs, because the light bounced off a table into my eyes. But to keep it simple, this room is lit up so I can see the people in the room. So we can see the moon because the moon gets lit up by the sun, and now the moon has light from the sun, and that's how we can see the moon in the sky. Now obviously, only half of the moon will get lit up, the half that's facing the sun. Now it's the right side, now it's the left side, now it's the bottom, now it's the top. Only the half that's facing the sun will be light, and the other half will always be dark. So why do we sometimes see a full moon, sometimes nothing, and sometimes half? Why does that happen? The answer is, each person in this room could only see half of this ball. Sometimes the person says, what do you mean? I see the whole ball. I'll explain. Now I see this half. Now I see that half. At once, a person can't see more than half the ball. If so, if the half that's facing you is the half that's completely lit up, if the room will be dark, it'll be a little easier to see this. You can take a ball, I brought a few extra balls, you can bring one home, take a light bulb, and do it yourself. You get the idea. Now, the light half is the one half that's facing you. You would see a complete circle. It's called a full moon. It's only half. Full moon means either full circle, or full moon means the complete half that's facing you is completely lit up. Now, the part that's not lit up is facing you, the dark half. The not lit up half you cannot see from Earth. So this is called the new moon. You can't see anything. You cannot see a non-lit up moon. And that's the dark part at that time is facing Earth. You can't see anything. Now the part that's facing you is half light and half dark. If so, you could see half a moon. So that means even though the moon is always half light and half dark throughout the month, but depending which half we see, the more the lit up half we see, the bigger the moon, and the more from the part that's unlit is facing Earth, the less we see. So the moon, the phases have nothing to do with the Earth's shadow, nothing to do with the Earth blocking. That's an eclipse we'll get to very soon. But the idea is that the moon is always half light, half dark. A person only sees half, and depending how much the lit up half he sees, that's why it gets bigger and smaller. Now the question is, why throughout the month do we sometimes see the light half and sometimes see the dark half? So the answer is like this. Once a month, we'll explain what the Moiled is, and we'll explain when you see the moon in the sky, and then with that. Like this. Once a month, the moon travels one time around Earth. We announce every Shabbos and Varchim, the Moiled will be at a certain time. What does it mean, Moiled? Moiled means the moon is born. What does it mean the moon is born? So before I explain what it means, is when does it happen? It happens is when the moon is in between the Earth and the sun. That's the time of the Moiled. About 30 days later, once again, the Earth comes in between the Earth and the sun. That's the Moiled for the next month. Instead of using the globe, it's good to use my head a little bit. My head will be the Earth. And once a month, the moon travels around my head. Now, when the moon is in between my head and the sun, now, I'll try to use the light, but I don't know how much will help. Okay, the lit up half is the half that's facing the sun. The unlit half is facing me. Time of the Moiled, I don't see anything. 1 week into the month, the sun is coming from that side. This side is light, and the other side is dark. I see a half a moon. In the middle of the month, the same half that's facing the sun is also facing me, so I see a full moon, like I said before, a full circle or a complete lit up moon. 3 weeks into the month, once again, this side is light, the other side is dark, and once again, I see a half a moon, till once again it'll come in between me and the sun, and I only see the dark part is facing me, and I can't see the dark part, and that's the beginning of the next month. Now, why doesn't this happen every single month there should be a solar and lunar eclipse, which means it's like this. Every month, the moon should block the sun. Now, the moment that I can't see the sun, that should be a solar eclipse. And if you look on, it's possible to see on a Kodesh maybe, there's a shadow of my head over there. The moon should come into the Earth's shadow. There should be a lunar eclipse every single Tezvav l'Chodesh. The answer for that is that the path of the moon is tilted a little bit. So even though it goes around, it goes a little under the sun, now the moon won't block it out. Or in the middle, it'll go a little bit higher than the shadow, and the Earth's shadow won't block the sunlight to reach the moon, and then it won't, then a lunar eclipse will not occur every single month. Just one nice point, and maybe we'll end with that, is that when the Moilad happens for one time in the whole world, what does that mean? People say the Moilad happened for here, happened for Eretz Yisrael. When did the Moilad happen? The answer is, the Moilad is the time the moon is in between the earth and the sun. What time is it then? Well, what time is it now? It says on the clock 9:25. Well, here it's 9:25. In Los Angeles, it's 6:25. In Yerushalayim now, it's 4:25 in the morning. So what time is it now? So we say, oh, Eastern time, it's 9:30. Okay, so Eastern time. But the time of the Moilad, each person on the globe will have a different time. So for the person standing over here, it'll be 12 noon. For the person standing opposite, it will be 12 midnight. What we announce in Shul is the time of the Moilad, that the time, at the moment of Moilad, what time is then in Eretz Yisrael. Our whole calendar is based on that. So this way, we announce that time for Eretz Yisrael. Now for Tchilas Man Kiddush Levana or Seif Man Kiddush Levana, not a Rav. You can ask your own Rav, the Halacha Lamaisa, but most poskim say that you have to calculate 7 hours off from Eastern time to Eretz Yisrael time, because it's one moment when we say the Moilad happened, let's say at 10 o'clock in the evening, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon in Eastern time. It's the same exact moment that it happened, just we on our clocks have different time zones, and that's why we would see different times. So that's just a little review today, or we saw a little bit that we're able to get, but I hope everything now sounds extremely simple. We explained that there's something called concept of mazalos. It rises and sets, and that's why Mazal Kim rises and sets, and then there are different months of the year it changes. If, let's say, you want to get yourself a star chart, there'll be a different one for each month, because in the beginning of the month, each one will be different. Then we spoke a little bit about the moon. The moon is, the Moilad is when the moon is in between the earth and the sun, and once a month it takes about 30 days to travel around, and that's how the moon gets bigger and smaller. I hope this Be'ez Hashem will be a big help for everyone learning Olam Dei Daf Yomi. It shouldn't have to be this time when you get to the sugyas, you'll just trust the Gemara. Be'ez Hashem will be clear. You'll have enough background to be able to have a clear understanding in these Gemaras. Be'ez Hashem, thank you very much. Have a great night.